Hello, welcome to my weekly Friday reading. I am not reading a poem today because there was no poem that was speaking to me today. But the thing that I am going to read is an essay called The Forgotten Female, and it is from my book Death and Life. And yes, here we go. When I discarded the idea, or parked alongside the realization that God was not necessarily a man, as I had been raised to think and believe without question, I grew distant. As I accelerated away from what I knew, that ungovernable distance grew, and the flame that once lit my path began to flicker and hiss like a candle burnt to its wick, making longevity impossible without a new energy source. As I detoured past each patriarchal disruption and religious contradiction, the source of my self-loathing became evident, and a pattern of feminine deaths emerged. As I journeyed through intersections of unlearning and relearning, the dogmatic flavors of my life soured until unpalatable, and I became increasingly alienated from the God that had once been second nature. That alienation and disconnection peaked during times of prayer. In childhood, my maternal grandmother had fostered the habit of bedtime prayer, a habit that had instilled a sense of comfort and hope, and the unquestioned belief that God would, overnight, protect every animal, child, woman, and man while I slept. Of course, with age, realization dawned that God did not take care of the world overnight, or any time for that matter. Unquestioned belief gave rise to a highway of unanswered questions and inconsistencies that I was incapable of reconciling. This God and his religion had been used to colonize peoples, tribes, and ancient traditions. This God had been instrumental in the ideology of segregation and apartheid. This God had dictated sexuality and condemned difference. This God gifted free will but took away responsibility. This God fostered a false sense of security and contradicted my natural instincts by aligning them with guilt and shame. This God condemned suicide, and I couldn't understand how personal pain and suffering was a basis for judgment instead of forgiveness. The more I thought about it, the less sense this God made. The complete disconnect finally came when I separated the concepts man and God, and then God and church. It was clear from my destructive experiences with feminine persecution that patriarchy was neatly aligned with my old God. And this knowledge gave rise to an inevitable death. Except it was a death without mourning. For my grief had already taken place, year after year, under the paradigm of patriarchal religion, and a God who was well versed in the hypocrisy of love, but who in fact was nothing more than vengeful, judgmental, and sexist. Furthermore, when I separated the concepts God and church, all I was left with was religion, which, as it turned out, was just another form of control, a powerful form of government, patriarchal heaven. I finally asked myself the nagging question that had been graffitied on every single road sign of my life. If the old God was a man who never lived up to his reputation, then what exactly was I hanging on to, and why? Moreover, if I was to liberate myself from that regime and its propaganda, then what did my future look like? In truth, it meant obliterating the status quo of my former paradigm. It meant the death of God and the meaning of my authentic life. Judgment Day finally arrived for God and the league of dogmatic patriarchs who had oppressed the first 23 years of my life during my enlightening journey toward life. Once I absorbed the truth that the God from my childhood was a patriarchal God, and I, as the forgotten female, was fated to an eternity of subservience if I stayed the old course. I accepted that the dictatorship would last as long as I allowed it. I, as an intelligent and defiant female, did not belong to that subservient line. My knowledge and courage empowered me to end female oppression, both for myself and those girls and women who came after me. No more would I dilute my feminine power. No more would I accept their teachings. No more would I allow the double standards. No more would I view myself through their disparaging eyes. No more would I accept second best. No more. The God from my childhood was officially dead, and the paradigm under which I had wilted and nearly died was disassembled and carried away piece by piece. I was no longer the female that God forgot, and blind submission was no longer my religion. I decided that if there was a superior being, then it was incapable of being labeled. It was fluid, without gender, race, sexuality, in fact, any societal constructs. Furthermore, if there was a superior being, then some part of it was living and breathing through me, and I, as an intelligent, compassionate, thinking, evolving soul, equipped with natural instincts, was more than capable of gaining wisdom through my own personal experience, and not at all bound by the dictatorial rules and nonsensical regulations and judgments of a man-made paradigm. Furthermore, I was certain that the gift of free will was bestowed for a reason, and I recognized it as a huge responsibility. Free will held me and nobody else responsible and accountable for my own actions. I do not reject the idea of a superior being or miracles, for I have experienced all of those unquantifiable things. Instead, I choose to substitute man-made religion with spirituality. The way I see it, I give the superior being much more respect and gratitude by tapping into the potential that I have been born with, as opposed to judging myself as an inferior sinner who is nothing without the validation of a man-made paradigm. Boom! Take that, motherfuckers. I hope you enjoyed that. Bit of feminism, feminine power on a Friday. Yes, boom, boom. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will see you again next week. Mwah!